As a guitar player and bedroom musician, I, probably like much of you guys watching, often heavily rely on virtual instruments to make my demos sound the best that they can be. However, because I am a guitar player, one thing that I've never really thought about is, what about guitars? I play guitar, as you can see behind me. I don't need a VST guitar because I can just record the parts myself. Study Sound Audio, who are sponsoring this video, have just sent over their Axure Guitar VST to see what I can come up with. So I've decided that I'm going to try my best to make a demo track without touching a real instrument. No real guitar, no real bass, and no real drums. The entire demo track needs to be made completely in the box within my DAW, and the only things that I can use are the samples and the VST instruments. By the end of the video, if I can sit here and be happy about the final track as a demo, and I'd be happy to show people and stuff like that, I'm gonna count it as a success. So let's take a look at the Axure library to see if it can really do everything that I would do if I had a guitar physically in my hands. And then we'll go into the DAW and look at how I produce the whole track from start to finish. So this is the Axure Guitar MIDI processor. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different controls here, as well as some in the settings tab, which we'll get into in a little bit. So first up, we have the input control. We then have a pick attack control, which is really cool. By the way, all of these are automatable. There's also a release control. So I guess like the way that I was viewing that is like how much bloom you want there to be on your notes or how quick you want them to cut off. Essentially just like a decay knob. We then have a chug knob over here, which again is more in tune with the chugs. If you have chugs programmed or palm mute chugs programmed with the instrument, this will decide whether you want them really clampy and like really heavy picked and transient heavy, or if you want them to be a little bit more bloomy, if that makes sense. We then have a neck and bridge switch, so you can either choose to play on the bridge pickup or the neck pickup. For the rhythm tones, I chose bridge. I think for the lead tone, I chose neck. We'll get into that in a second. Maybe I didn't, but yeah, it's cool that you can have those options there. We also then have this phase drive button here, which, according to the website, it says that it's saturation, phase, and width within the one button, and it kind of enhances your DI a little bit. I actually didn't end up turning that on. I kind of just left it off. And then we have this power button here, which I think does literally nothing apart from turning the lights on and off, which is a nice touch. So the actual Axure library is modeled and sampled after a custom Carvin SC90. It has the Carvin C22 humbucker pickups, two-way switch, 24 medium jumbo frets. There definitely is a little bit of mojo about those older Carvins, like if you know type thing. So it's cool to see it being sampled into a library, and everything that you hear out of the plugin is just a clean DI. So you will need to reamp it later, but I kind of like that approach anyway because it allows you to be a little bit more flexible, and I'll get into that later as well. We then have the keyboard on the bottom of the plugin just so you can quickly, click notes or, use it with a MIDI controller to see what it sounds like. All the notes in blue is the range of the virtual instrument, so you can go all the way down to C0, which is very, very cool and awesome for that low genty stuff that we all love. And then the ones in red and green are a bit different. So if we click this settings button up here again, we have the key switches. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different articulations that you can, well, I shouldn't say articulations really, I should say techniques rather, that you can use with the key switches, because there's articulations over here on the right side. So some of the key switches include, tapping, sustained downstrokes, upstrokes, palm mutes, sliding up fast, sliding down fast, sliding up slow, sliding down slow, harmonics, all that stuff. And then with the articulations, you can have things like, string noise, harmonic rakes, that whole like spirit box Gojira thing, dead notes up, dead notes down, left hand noise, release noise, all that stuff. So there's actually a bunch of control that you can do within the programming to really make it sound like a real performance. One thing that this doesn't have at the moment that I would love to see in the future is bends. Maybe that's coming in a future update. I understand how hard it is to do bends, especially with a sample library, but that would be really, really, really cool. So the way that I've got this project set up now is I've got an instance of Axure for the left side of rhythm guitar. I've got one for the right side of rhythm guitar as well. And then I also have one for like this layer lead thing here, which is essentially just like, notes picked in eighths, running through a bunch of delay and reverb. And then I have the main lead guitar that comes in the second half of the track. So let's go through this track one instrument at a time and see what we've got going on. So starting on the rhythm guitars, I've got this MIDI track here, which includes the rhythm guitars for both left and right side. If I click in here, I can switch between left and right, and it is the same MIDI. It's pretty much the same notes and everything. It's playing the same riff, very typical modern metal, just left and right playing the same thing. But playing it, this is what it sounds like. Yeah. So as you can tell, it sounds really, really close. Like, obviously there's some subtleties that, you only really get from hands on a string, but in a full mix, when you're hearing this in a full mix with bass, with drums and everything else that's going on, it's actually like very, very, very good. So the riff that I've written was originally like, if you imagine it as on a 7-string tuned to drop A flat, that's what the riff is written in. And it's just, a typical riff, melodic riff. And I've tried to program it in a way that sounds real. Obviously, there are some things that are gridded, like this is really gridded. I'm sure that I can make this sound more realistic. I've just never programmed guitar before, so it is a little bit difficult. One thing that I was like making sure I was doing was in the chords and stuff, like you can see like there's like this stroking movement where it's not like the chords start at the exact same moment. They kind of rake into each other, especially for the palmy ones as well. So I made sure to do that. But honestly, like the reality is if I was tracking real guitars, I would probably be tracking it in a way that was this gridded anyway. So it doesn't really faze me at all to do that because I would just be doing the same thing if it was with a real guitar. And again, like I'm viewing this as like a demo track. So I've just done some like super quick randomization on the velocities and stuff like that. I'm not really paying too much attention to that because again, I'm viewing this as like something to do for a demo track or pre-pro or something like that. But I think all in all, it sounds really good. The tone that you're hearing isn't coming from the plugin though, so let's just quickly take a look at that. So the tone right now for the rhythm section is going through Fort and Nameless and then the Nolly plugin. But before that, I guess like on the DI, I've done a little bit of EQ in the DI, just cut out some low end, and there was some low mid stuff that I thought just wasn't translating well with the tones that I typically dial in, so I dialed that out. I also then have an instance of Pro MB. This is something that I've been doing more recently. You basically set an expander and it only kind of kicks in when there's something physically being played. If there's any decayed notes or anything like that, to get rid of the hiss before it hits the front of the amp, it comes back down. So as I play it, you see what I mean. So you can see for like the long decayed notes, that kind of comes down in the DI so that when it hits the front of the amp, or in this case, the pedals first, which is the Fort and Nameless plugin, I'm using the grind pedal and the Zool, and then it goes to the Nolly, just the amp. I'm not using any pedals in here, so I can turn that off and I can turn off the effects as well. Goes into the third amp of the Nolly, the third cab, and then a little bit of EQ. It ducks out those high frequencies on sustained notes. Bit of EQ shaping within the plugin, probably because I just couldn't be bothered doing it too extensively anywhere else. So it's good that it has it in the plugin. I've just taken out, again, a little bit of low mids, boosted up some high mids, and boosted up some like, airy top end to get it to more of that kind of like really crispy, very Ford modern metal tone that I really like. Next up, we have this layer lead guitar. Now, all this is doing really is just playing like single notes in eighths. I've put a lot of delay, a lot of reverb on there. All I've done is just put this Nolly patch on there. Again, delay, reverb, fourth amp. And then I've just like done very minimal EQ to make it sit underneath the rhythm guitars. So I'll play both of them together so you can hear what that sounds like. Kind of just like following the melody of the chords. And then lastly, we have the main lead guitar that comes in the second half of the track. So this is, again, I think it was neck pickup, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, so I was using the neck pickup. The input is low, the pick attack is very low. I wanted this to be like very sultry, very smooth sounding, much like a lead guitar on a neck pickup. The tone that I'm running through is the Pliny X plugin. I think I'm just using like a default patch, but I just changed the amp to the third one and just added a little bit of delay and reverb. Or I don't think I even changed that. I think I just left that. I wanted like a very like ethereal sounding lead. And then just a tiny bit of EQ. Again, nothing crazy, right? I haven't really mixed this properly, but I guess it sounds good in context with everything else, and that's the main thing. Cool, so that's all the guitars all together. That sounds like this. That like neck pickup placement really does a lot for that lead tone within the VST, because it finds itself in a spot in the mix that is different from the high gain rhythm guitars and the layered leads. Even though they're different tones, just something about that neck pickup works really well against the bridge. We then have the bass. So again, just like the guitars, I use, Submission Audio's Gin bass. I'm sure that a lot of people use that as well. And I've just programmed the bass in. And if anything, I actually programmed the bass first, I think, and then just copied these notes, put them into the guitar MIDI, and then made these notes here chords. So right now there's no processing on the bass. So let's turn that on and see what that sounds like. And then lastly, we have the P5 GGD kit. I think it's like full turbo. So again, virtual drums, it's not real. And this sounds absolutely phenomenal. I really love this drum library, and I find that it works really well with the Axure guitar library for some reason. Just, I don't know, everything about this mix seems to work well with each other. So once we put all of these instruments together, all these VSTs that are not me playing or anyone else playing, all these fake instruments together, this is what it sounds like. And this is what you can come up with in a demo song. So very short, very sweet, but as you can tell, it pretty much ticks all the boxes. Nice big riff, it's got the layer leads, it's got the lead section as well with the lead guitar, dingwall bass sounds, very, very good drum sounds, a bit of post-production with like some booms and snare bombs and stuff like that. But it's amazing to me that, with programs like Axure and all the other ones that I mentioned, you can get stuff and write stuff and make stuff and produce stuff that sounds like very, very, very comparable to like a real instrument being recorded in a full mix and everything. Like, I'm sure that if I showed the average person something like this, they would 100% think that everything in here is real, especially the guitar. Guitar's always been something that I've found that it's very, very hard to like make it sound real. But I think with stuff like Axure, like we're getting to the point where it's bridging the gap even more, which is very scary to think. But it is cool as well, because it means that everyone, no matter if you're a guitarist or you play another instrument, you can make demos and get the ideas that are in your head on the computer in the door, ready to share with the world, ready to share with band members, or even just like, just to be creative. I think it's very, very cool. So overall, I think the Axure Guitar VST is just a great tool for translating the ideas from your head into the tracks very seamlessly. I'm very glad that it's just a clean DI where, we can reamp it and we can run it through all the plugins that we usually do, run it through our own setups, run it through our own instruments, own tones and stuff like that. That is exactly the way that I would want it to be. If I don't have access to a guitar or my ideal recording setup, I think there is enough flexibility within the Axure library to get my ideas and thought processes across in a demo, or even just in a final release if I'm looking for a particularly like mechanical sound that would honestly be harder to record naturally on a real instrument. However, if you're someone that doesn't play guitar, like a drummer, vocalist, bassist, or whatever it is, and you want to show your bandmates or other people ideas and tracks just like the one that I made, I think having something like the Axure library is really, really, really handy. But what do you guys think? Definitely let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.